HOA Karen kicked my 6-year-old daughter down our porch stairs. As Sophie lay there crying, calling, "Daddy, Daddy, help me," with blood trickling from her knee, something inside me snapped. Karen stood there, clipboard in hand, smirking. She had no idea who she was messing with. 2 minutes later, 5 military convoys rolled into our street. Before we start the story, please comment down from which country are you watching, like the video and subscribe. It happened on Tuesday afternoon. I just picked Sophie up from kindergarten, and we were walking up our driveway when I spotted Karen Thompson marching toward our house, that familiar scowl etched into her face. She'd been the HOA president of Pinecrest Estates for 7 years, ruling our neighborhood with an iron fist and a 78-page rulebook that seemed to grow longer every month. "Mr. Miller," she called out sharply before we even reached our front door, "I see your garbage cans are still visible from the street." I sighed and knelt down to Sophie's level. "Sweetheart, go wait on the porch while I talk to Miss Thompson, okay?" Sophie nodded, clutching her purple backpack to her chest as she scurried up the steps. She was already afraid of Karen after last week's incident, when Karen had screamed at her for accidentally stepping on the edge of her immaculate lawn. "The garbage cans are behind the fence, Karen," I said calmly, turning to face her. "Only the tops are visible, and according to Section 8, Paragraph 3 of the HOA bylaws." "Don't quote the bylaws to me," Karen snapped, stomping up our walkway. Her heels clicked aggressively against the concrete as she approached, clipboard clutched to her chest like a shield. "I helped write those bylaws. The intent is clear: no unsightly items visible from the street." I took a deep breath, using the same calming techniques I'd learned during my 15 years as an Army colonel. After 3 tours in combat zones and leading Special Forces teams through high-stress operations, I should have been able to handle one middle-aged woman with a power complex. But Karen Thompson had a special talent for pushing buttons I didn't even know I had. "Is there something specific you need today, Karen?" I asked, positioning myself between her and the porch where Sophie was sitting. Karen's eyes narrowed as she flipped through her papers. "Your grass was half an inch too high on Sunday. That's a $150 fine. Your mailbox is the wrong shade of black, another $200. And that flag holder doesn't comply with Section 5, Paragraph 12 of the—" "Daddy," Sophie called softly from the porch, "I made a picture for you at school today." Karen's head snapped up, her face flushing with anger at the interruption. "Young lady, adults are speaking right now." "It's okay, Sophie," I said gently. "You can show me your picture in just a minute." "No, it is not okay," Karen hissed, pushing past me and storming up the porch stairs. "This is exactly the kind of parenting that creates undisciplined children. No respect for authority." Sophie shrank back against the front door, her eyes wide with fear. Since losing my wife Maria to cancer 2 years ago, I'd been doing my best to give Sophie a stable, loving home. Karen's constant harassment was undoing all my efforts to help her feel safe. "That's enough," I said firmly, following Karen up the stairs. "You need to leave now." Karen spun around, jabbing her finger at my chest. "Don't you dare tell me what to do. My husband sits on the city council, and I can make your life very, very difficult." Sophie tried to slip past Karen to reach me, clutching her drawing. That's when it happened. Karen turned abruptly, extending her arm to block my daughter. Whether she meant to push or just stop her, I'll never know. The force of her movement sent Sophie tumbling backward down the 6 porch steps. The sound of my daughter's scream tore through the air as she landed hard on the concrete path below. Her drawing fluttered down beside her, a crayon picture of our family, just the 2 of us now, holding hands in front of our house. "Daddy, Daddy, help me," Sophie wailed, blood beginning to seep from her scraped knee and elbow. Her face contorted with pain and fear as tears streamed down her cheeks. I vaulted over the porch railing, landing beside her in an instant. My combat medical training kicked in as I quickly assessed her injuries. Nothing appeared broken, but her knee was badly scraped, and a bruise was already forming on her arm where she tried to catch herself. As I gently cradled Sophie, my eyes traveled back up to the porch. Karen stood at the top of the stairs, clipboard still clutched in her manicured hands. And she was smirking, actually smirking, as if Sophie's pain was just an inconvenient interruption to her important HOA business. "Children need to watch where they're going," she said dismissively. "Now, about those violations." Something inside me broke. The careful restraint I'd maintained through months of Karen's harassment vanished in an instant. I felt the same cold, focused rage that had saved my life in combat. "You have exactly 30 seconds to get off my property," I said, my voice deadly calm as I held my sobbing daughter. "Are you threatening me?" Karen's eyes widened in theatrical outrage. I'll have you know that threatening an HOA official is grounds for 20 seconds. Karen's mouth snapped shut momentarily, but she stood her ground. This incident will be reported as another violation. Your inability to control your child and your aggressive behavior are creating a hostile environment in our community. Still cradling Sophie against my chest, I pulled out my phone with my free hand and made a single call. Marcus? It's James Miller. Code red at my location. Karen Thompson just assaulted Sophie. I hung up without waiting for a response and looked directly at Karen. You should run. Karen laughed, the sound brittle and hollow. What, you called a friend to scare me? I'm shaking in my boots, Colonel. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I focused on Sophie, whispering soothing words as I carried her inside to clean her wounds. Behind me, I heard Karen stomping down the stairs, muttering about additional fines and board meetings. Exactly 2 minutes after my call, the ground began to vibrate. The distinctive rumble of heavy military vehicles filled the air as 5 armored convoys turned onto our quiet suburban street, followed by 2 police cruisers with lights flashing. Neighbors emerged from their homes, eyes wide with shock as uniformed soldiers poured out of the vehicles, forming a perimeter around my property. I stepped back onto the porch, Sophie now calmed and bandaged, watching as her favorite cartoon characters decorated band-aids on her knee and elbow. Karen had been heading back to her house but froze mid-stride at the sight of the military convoy. Her face drained of color as Colonel Marcus Daniels, my former second-in-command and current head of military police for the nearby base, approached with 4 MPs flanking him. Karen Thompson? He asked formally, his voice carrying across the now silent street. Why yes, she stammered, her earlier bravado evaporating. What is the meaning of this? You can't bring military vehicles into a civilian neighborhood. Mrs. Thompson, you're being detained for assault on a minor and for questioning regarding multiple complaints of harassment and intimidation. Marcus nodded to the MPs who moved to flank her. We also have reason to believe you have information regarding your husband's activities with defense contracts. This is ridiculous. Karen shrieked as they escorted her toward one of the vehicles. Do you know who my husband is? Richard Thompson? Marcus replied coolly. Currently being questioned by the FBI regarding defense contract fraud? Yes, we're aware. That's partly why we responded so quickly to Colonel Miller's call. My neighbors watched in stunned silence as Karen was placed in the back of a police cruiser. Some were filming on their phones. Others were whispering furiously to each other. A few were openly smiling. Mrs. Jenkins, my 78-year-old neighbor from across the street, hobbled over on her cane. Colonel Miller, she said, her voice quavering, I saw everything from my window. That woman pushed your little girl deliberately. She's been terrorizing all of us for years. I'll testify too, called out Mike Ramirez from 2 doors down. She fined us $500 when my wife was in the hospital because our lawn didn't get mowed that week. She reported me to child services, added Anita Garcia, a single mother from the end of the block. Because I worked a double shift and asked my sister to watch my kids. Said it was child abandonment. One by one, neighbors stepped forward, sharing stories of Karen's reign of terror. Excessive fines that forced families to take out loans. Petty rules selectively enforced against residents she disliked. Threats and intimidation against anyone who challenged her authority. Marcus approached me as the MPs finished securing the scene. James, he said quietly, we've been building a case against Richard Thompson for months. Defense contract kickbacks, money laundering through the HOA. It's a big operation. Your call just gave us the perfect excuse to move in today instead of next week. I looked down at Sophie, who was watching the scene with wide eyes from the safety of my arms. I had no idea it was that serious. I just wanted her to stop hurting my daughter. Marcus nodded grimly. Sometimes justice arrives in unexpected ways. We'll need statements from you and any neighbors who witnessed the assault. The next few hours were a blur of police statements and medical examinations. Dr. Patel from the local urgent care confirmed that Sophie had no serious injuries, just scrapes and bruises, but the psychological impact was evident in the way she clung to me, refusing to let go even for a moment. That night, as I tucked Sophie into bed, she asked the question I'd been dreading. Daddy, why did Miss Karen push me? Does she hate me? My heart clenched as I smoothed her hair back from her forehead. No, sweetheart. Karen is she's someone who forgot how to be kind. It wasn't your fault at all. Will she come back? Sophie whispered, fear evident in her voice. No, I promised, pressing a kiss to her forehead. She won't ever hurt you again. 3 weeks later, I sat in a packed courtroom, Sophie's small hand in mine, as the judge delivered Karen's sentence. News of the case had spread throughout the community, and many of our neighbors had come to witness the proceedings. Richard Thompson had already pleaded guilty to multiple fraud charges in a separate federal case. Judge Martinez, a Vietnam veteran himself, looked over his glasses at Karen, who appeared much smaller without her clipboard and authority. "Mrs. Thompson," he began, his voice stern, "this court finds your actions particularly reprehensible. You used your position to terrorize your neighbors through a pattern of harassment and intimidation, culminating in the assault of a child, the daughter of a decorated military officer who served this country with distinction." He shuffled his papers, fixing Karen with a hard stare. "While your husband's financial crimes are being handled in federal court, I am sentencing you to 5 years for assault on a minor, with additional charges of harassment, extortion and conspiracy to commit fraud to be served concurrently." As Karen was led away by court officers, Sophie tugged at my hand. "Is the mean lady going to jail, Daddy?" "Yes, sweetheart," I said, lifting her onto my lap. "She can't hurt you or anyone else anymore." Sophie considered this for a moment, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Good," she finally said. "She made everyone sad." Out of the mouths of babes. The aftermath of Karen's arrest transformed our neighborhood in ways I never could have anticipated. An emergency HOA meeting was called, and the remaining board members resigned in shame when it became clear they had enabled Karen's behavior for years. A new board was elected, with Mrs. Jenkins as the president and me as the vice president, despite my protests. "We need someone who understands the difference between leadership and tyranny," Mrs. Jenkins insisted, and the vote was unanimous. The first thing we did was rewrite the HOA bylaws, reducing the 78-page rulebook to 10 pages of common-sense guidelines focused on safety and community rather than control. The excessive fines were abolished, replaced with a system of community service for minor violations. The Thompsons' house, seized as part of the asset forfeiture in Richard's case, was sold at auction. The neighborhood collectively held its breath when a moving truck appeared, relaxing only when a young family with twins Sophie's age emerged. Within weeks, the sounds of children's laughter filled the street again. 6 months after the incident, we held our first neighborhood block party. Tables lined the street, covered with potluck dishes from every culture represented in our diverse community. Children ran between houses playing games, no longer afraid of stepping on the wrong patch of grass or making too much noise. Colonel Daniels attended with his family, no longer in uniform but still commanding respect. As we stood watching Sophie play tag with her new friends, he nudged my shoulder. "You know, James, when you called that day, I had no idea it would lead to breaking up an entire fraud operation." I shook my head, smiling. "Neither did I. I just wanted to protect my daughter." "That's what makes you a good father," he replied. "And it's what made you a good commander. Knowing which battles matter." That night, as I tucked Sophie into bed, exhausted from a day of play and sugar, she asked me a question that caught me off guard. "Daddy, do you think Mommy would be proud of us?" My throat tightened. Maria had been gone for 2 years, but Sophie still remembered her. The way she smelled like vanilla, how she sang off-key during bath time, her laugh that could fill a room. "Yes, sweetheart," I managed. "Mommy would be very proud of you. You're so brave and kind just like she was." "And proud of you too," Sophie insisted. "For making the mean lady go away and making everybody happy again." I smiled, blinking back tears. "I hope so. Being your daddy without her here, it's the hardest mission I've ever had." "But you're the best daddy," Sophie said with absolute conviction, throwing her arms around my neck. "Even if you don't know how to braid hair right." I laughed despite myself, remembering Maria's exasperation at my clumsy attempts to style Sophie's hair. "Your mom was definitely better at that part." As Sophie drifted off to sleep, I sat watching her, this tiny, resilient person who somehow made me stronger every day. The military had taught me about brotherhood, about fighting for a cause bigger than myself. But Sophie had taught me about a love so fierce it could summon armies with a single phone call. Our community continues to heal and grow stronger. Where once neighbors hid behind closed doors, afraid of drawing Karen's attention, now they gather on front porches and in backyards. Children play freely, riding bikes and drawing with chalk on sidewalks that were once forbidden territory. Sometimes, when Sophie plays with friends on our porch, I catch myself scanning for threats out of habit. But then she'll look up, give me that brilliant smile that's so like her mother's, and I remember, we won this battle. And as a single father learning to navigate tea parties and hair ribbons while still maintaining my sanity, that victory means everything. Karen never knew who she was messing with that day on our porch. Not just a retired Army colonel with high-level connections, but a father who would move heaven and earth, or at least 5 military convoys, to keep his daughter safe. And that's a force no HOA president should ever underestimate.